I used to go to meetings a lot. Yep, I did.
Oh.
He is now.
She didn't have it, she would have been.
I like that one a lot. I really do. I've been on it. It feels very much like a county board. Oh, yeah.
Minus the chair.
I'm probably gonna.
Once a month. That's a once a month. Planning zoning's at 4:30.
Agenda, and then all these blue ones will open in different windows, so you don't have to scroll through all of them.
Yeah, well, we'll see how everyone else sees it. Yeah, we push it to 5. It's always been 4.
As long as it wasn't one of those that are 2 or something like that.
I put on mine. I can't do those either.
You can go into this one, or
Yes, some of us still do that.
Right. I can't prepare quite yet. I would love to, but I can't quite.
calendar.
True. And then the bank
Oh,
can take my
that one-
house
that
and
one
go
was
live in a
in
tent.
here.
And
Let's see, you've got a whole bunch of stuff
Sorry.
open. I'm gonna click some of these.
yeah, there's our old CFO from Mason probably 3 years ago. He's on like 4 nonprofit boards. So he's just as busy.
Thank you.
You can hold.
Still do.
Is it awake? Mine was asleep.
Oh. Lost my butt. Oh, there we go.
Pam, quickly,
I got it.
I have 4 extra.
Gotta wake up.
Does it help to throw it against the wall?
Point at me.
Cussing works too.
Well, it's now 6 o'clock. It's 6 o'clock, 6 PM. I would like to call the April 18th special county board meeting to order. Up for the pledge, moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So next item, item 3 is roll call. Looks like all members are present. Item 4 will be approval of the agenda. I would remind everyone making motions in second, please state, you can either say supervisor in your last name or your last name and then your motion. And I will recognize by ear, not by eye, because it gets very confusing if everybody's thing. So make sure you speak up. So I'm looking for a motion and a second on approval of the agenda.
Supervisor Flynn makes a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay. Supervisor Flynn motions, is there a second?
Supervisor Bergeron seconds.
Supervisor Bergeron, second. You have a motion and a second on approval of agenda. Any discussion? Okay, please indicate yea or nay by pressing the green button for yes and red for no. The agenda is approved unanimously. Item 5, members of public wishing to be heard.
There were no members.
Okay, there's no members who signed up to be heard. So next, we'll move on. Item 6 is the county board chair appointments. So you have before you the sheets that show the assignments. I don't know if it's easy to be overwhelmed and look and understand. So I will explain a little bit what the process was. You've all submitted, some of your requests. And we take that into account, and we also look at the experiences you have, and we put them all together on a sheet. And just to give you an idea of the complexity, this is where we start with a sheet that looks like this. And if you look, there's 35 different assignments. We have the 21 people, and then we have various interactions between some that have to meet. You know, you have to be on one committee and the other. We have a variety of things of, experience when you have, for example, like a planning and zoning, things have been going on for a long time. You have only maybe 2 people that have been on there for a while. You'd like to have some continuity. And you have backgrounds of people, and then you have all kinds of requests. So we do the best we can to try to get everybody assigned. Some having some new things, the new people, we're trying to get where your things are. And it's quite the convoluted process, but we all work together with it, even though there's the standing committees and the special committees are the ones that are the board's responsibility. We'll consider those now. But then the other ones that are the administrator's responsibility, sometimes there's some overlap. And I know it's kind of complex, but for example, just to mention one for you, like planning and zoning we need to have a person that's both on planning and zoning and land conservation, so they overlap. The person has to be on 2 of them. And we have the same with a couple others, so there's some statutory requirements. So it gets kind of complex. And so what we feel, we've come up with a really good shot that we have with it. Other things we have to avoid is people that are on committees that are on another committee. We can't have one committee show up and yet 3 of those people are on a committee somewhere else, which makes it a quorum for another committee when you showed up for one. So we have to ascertain all that stuff so that doesn't happen as well. So it's a very complex thing. And I think, you can look over and see the assignments there. There's some of these, especially on the special committees, me included when I first came. Many of them are very interesting, but you might not recognize the name and what they do. And some of them you'll learn. And what I'd like to tell you about the committees is, like at the first meeting, we had all these presentations that we had of the departments that the county has. We'll have more tonight. And yet information overload. And there's just so much detail and so much that. We'll expose you to that, but you're not expected to know it all. But what will happen when you get a committee assignment, you'll have your little window on the committee there, and you will really learn about that. So the next 2 years on those committees, you will get a really good insight on the committees you're assigned to on that part of the county and how it works. And that's where you do the real learning, not have to understand the vastness, because it is a vast thing the county's responsibilities are vast. And tonight, try not to worry again when we're showing you the other departments and the other way the county operates, because you have to know about it. Don't be discouraged on these first 2 meetings when you're at the end and you're just sitting there overwhelmed with information, because it is an overwhelming information. The stuff here in the county, in the committees you're on and stuff, is where you will really dig into it, and you really get the learning from that, and it's a great learning experience. And so that said, the first order of business we have would be to approve the county board chair appointments. These would be the standing committees and the special committees. And then by statute, we either approve all of them or we summarily reject it all. So we don't make changes here because you could see the process would be unreal. So it's either unanimous approval of what we have here or unanimous rejection, and we go back and try to figure it out.
Later makes a motion to approve the appointees.
Okay, you have a motion by Flater to approve.
Gearing second.
Gearing second. We can have discussion. It's hard much to discuss, but the floor is open for discussion if anybody wants to discuss anything. Okay. Okay, then we can vote on these committees then. And green for yes, and the red button for no. So the board chair appointments are approved.
Nope, I haven't.
What is it? I mean,
That's just the total votes.
oh, total votes. Sorry.
one, yes.
Okay. Same sentence over again, they are approved. Thank you. So next we move on to the county administrator appointments. These are the statutory committees and boards, of which you can list as well. The same goes for that. So I'd look for a motion to approve.
Supervisor Bomar approves.
Supervisor Omar moves to approve. Is there a second?
Supervisor Kelly, second.
Supervisor Kelly, second. And again, any discussion on these at all? Floor is open for that. Okay, if not, then we can take a vote on approval of the county administrator appointments. Okay, so the county administrator appointments are approved. Thank you. And I wish you all well in serving on your committees. It's an eye-opening experience for the new people. You'll learn a lot. And at the committee level, you can participate with whoever you are, and you really, it's a place to dig in to find out how things work. Thank you. So now the fun stuff, more of the orientation. So item 1 will be the Wisconsin Municipal Mutual Insurance Company presentation, and Palin Allen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't need that. Good evening, folks. My name is Deb Blevins, and I am the Corporation Counsel Legal Assistant. And one of my many responsibilities is handling all the liability and property insurance claims for the county, as well as the insurance renewals. So this evening, we have Palin Allen, who's our Executive Director with WMIC, and his Director of Operations, Jackie. And then in the back, we have John Vose and Brian from MPIC, who handle our property insurance. Oh, yeah.
Very good, thanks, Deb. I see we're still unnumbered, everyone, so close to the door. Thanks everyone for having us come out. I think I met a few of you maybe a year or so ago, and understand there's some new additions, so welcome to all of you, and appreciate the opportunity to just share a little bit about who we are. In case you're not sure that you heard Deb correctly, she did say my name is Palin Allen. It's okay to laugh. You can laugh. Thanks, Mom and Dad. It's a ridiculous name, but you know, you get used to it after a while. With the time that we have, there's a number of slides in there. We're not going to get to everything, but I just want to give you a quick overview and a flavor as to who we are and why we should care. You know, with that, the why you should care part. Overview. 1987 is when we were formed. I know that's ancient history. You might wonder why sitting here now that should matter. I'll explain that in a second. We were formed in a market that is very different, actually fairly similar to what we've had over the last 5 years, a hard market. A lot of municipalities, counties, et cetera, in the state of Wisconsin were given an opportunity to form mutuals, similar to like a pool. And we took advantage of that, we being WMIC, and you were one of the founding members. So going back to 87, Chippewa County has been a member of WMIC and was one of the first ones to get off the ground with the rest of us. A lot has changed, you know, during that time, but one thing that hasn't changed is our membership. We've retained everyone that started with us, and not only those, but also everyone that's joined us along the way. So in 35 years or so of existence, we haven't lost a member, and we appreciate that. We'd like to think maybe we're doing something right, but I think it's more so understanding what this is really about, because this is our company. WMIC's very different, very unique to what you might experience in a lot of the insurance or corporate type world. We have a sole purpose, that is to serve our members. In my role as executive director, I simply see myself as a steward of yours and the other members' resources. If you look around the state, there's 20 of you that make up our membership. So we have 16 counties. We have 15 counties, 3 cities, and then 2 special districts. So we have Lambeau Field and American Family Field. That would be part of that membership. So that's the representation. Those, that may not sound like a lot, like we only have 20 members, but it accounts for about half the population of the state of Wisconsin. So collectively, you're a part of a pretty big group. What does that do for you? Well, being an owner gives you a lot of say in what it is that we do. We have a 7-person board. So if you think of 20 members, 7 of them are on the board. There's a lot of influence and a lot of say through that board. Each and every member has an official representative. Our meetings are well attended. Our members are very active. You know, they join us and they participate. And they give us a lot of guidance and direction because we talk about this internally with a team all the time. It's like, hey, we can do whatever it is that you want us to do within reason, but we need that direction. And so we rely on our board and our members to give us that. I think the best thing and one of the nice things about when it's all said and done at the end of the day, we don't answer to a shareholder. We don't answer, you know, to someone that's expecting our stock prices to go up. We answer to you as member owners. And so if we take the premiums in at the beginning of the year and we don't need it, we can give it back. And we do that in the form of dividends, programming, and other things. We are here solely and exclusively to serve you as members. So I hit a lot of the things that are on this next slide. It's probably going to sound like I'm going so fast. I'm trying to give you a subliminal message. That's not it at all. I want to respect your time. I know you have other things to do. I'm sure you were pretty excited, pretty thrilled when you saw insurance was going to be a topic for tonight. But you know, not everybody thinks this is a great way to spend your evening. So I mentioned the history of our dividends, how you have input, a lot of networking opportunities. Again, everyone on the membership or in the membership, they get to know each other and they're like individuals. So, you know, we have corp counsels and we have risk managers and administrators and on in all of these entities. So when we have the opportunity to get together, we can share our challenges. We can tee up topics and bring them forth and say, how are others handling this? How are you dealing with? How will you address it? So we provide a lot of opportunities for that type of environment within our membership. Sharing of best practices goes right along with that. And then one of the biggest things really is our access to markets. So any one of our members individually would probably struggle to access competitive reinsurance markets, for instance. Or they might not be able to go into a tough cyber market like we've had and leverage their size and their position to be able to say, hey, we'd like a better deal, we'd like better coverage, et cetera, et cetera. But because you're one of many, we can take that entire entity and go into those markets and be able to drive down pricing, get better products, better service, et cetera, et cetera. So it's one of the advantages, one of the things that I think is important, again, for you sitting in these chairs, knowing that you are actually an owner of this organization. I think these are the types of things I would want to know if I was in your position. Again, real quick, the main ones that we provide, liability, general liability coverage. We also do auto. It includes things like public officials, errors and omissions. Some of yours may perk up on that. Hopefully we never have to use that one. But a good one to have, I just mentioned cyber. There's EPL, the employment practices. We have an excess work comp program and auto physical damage. And we just, other miscellaneous coverages kind of as needed. So at times a need will come up and you're looking for a marketplace and you may not know where to get it. And we try to tap into our resources to find access to different markets for those unique situations. We are a TPA, a third-party administrator, which means that we handle your claims from $1, from the beginning. We handle them. You carry what's called an SIR. You'll see this thrilling insurance tower in front of you. But I think it's helpful to understand kind of insurance 101 and how this works. When I say SIR, that's self-insured retention. It's like a deductible. Our members' SIRs vary based on size. Yours is at 200,000. Thank you, Jackie. At 200,000. So when you think about what that means is you retain the first 200,000 of any loss. That's why it's important that you do the right things. That's why it's important that you provide, training and you utilize risk management strategies and you take the advice of corp counsel, et cetera. That's why you do all those things because the first 200,000 is really your dime. WMIC and the way that it's structured, because we work with counties, we have higher SIRs. People will retain more risk. We're there for the big stuff, right? Once it goes over that, that's when we kick in. We take up to $2 million over whatever your SIR is. There's another layer of $8 million on top of that. And then we'll go all the way up to $15 million with another reinsurance carrier out there in the marketplace. So why does that matter? 15 million of coverage in Wisconsin is really strong. We're really the only entity out there that's providing that. We think it's necessary. If you're familiar at all with the world of insurance, nuclear verdicts, and the way things are going, you'd rather have a little bit too much on the high side than too much on the low side. And so it provides a layer of protection that we're proud to bring to you. And that actually just came into effect about a year ago. We added that. A lot of services. It's in your packet. I'm not going to go through it, but we are constantly expanding. I've been here about a year and a half now. And the first thing that came out of the initial market analysis was we needed to do more. We have absolutely put our nose to the grindstone. I could not be more proud of the team that we have. We are lean and mean because, again, it's your money, not ours. And we had a 3-year business plan, a massive 3-year business plan with almost 50 projects on it. And the team was able to complete 80% of that in the first year. So I'm taking an opportunity in front of you to brag on them, but more so to show you that I love the direction of our company. I love the way that we are going together. Our membership, our board seems very excited based on the strategic planning that we've had. And our team is excited because we like what we do. We like working with all of our members, and it's a really unique exposure that you have in municipal government. Jackie, do you want to just touch briefly on our guiding principles, please?
Yep, so again, we handle your. So we do handle your liability claims, like Palin said, you have a 200 self-insured retention fund, so we do handle it from $1. We're very responsible with that money. We work very closely with Deb and Todd at our counsel's office to make sure we're on the same page when it comes to resolution that claim, whether it's paying it or disallowing it. If you're on the executive committee, and as you will see on the board, you will see requests come in from us that say we want to settle this claim or we want to disallow this claim. So you will see that depending on the level. And you can see, obviously, we do pay what's owed. We do use our immunities that are found under 89380 that have immunities and caps. So we do try to use those defenses, and then we just don't pay claims. Because if you start paying claims that you don't owe for like nuisance value or economic reasons, it starts a precedent that we don't want to do. So we try to avoid those economic reasons for payments. If you want to go to the next slide.
Yep.
So WMIC is also a TPA service for your work comp. I believe it was a month or 2 ago that you guys might have renewed your work comp self-insured program. So as WMIC is the TPA service, we again also handle all your claims from $1 as the TPA. So we work closely with Joanna to get those done. Through that, you have our services, which are bill review, so we really control the cost of that money. I think your guys' work comp self-insured fund is $550. So when a bill comes in that we owe, we have a bill reviewer review it, make sure it's within reason, we're not paying things that we don't owe. We also have a prescription preferred medical vendor that we use, so we're making sure we're getting the employees their prescriptions at a reasonable cost too. So all this stuff is a program that we can utilize to help lower costs. Same with nurse case management. We would work closely with Joanna to put that on a case that required it. Your bigger cases will probably require that, or we would want that specialty nurse on it to look over it as well. And then the next slide, I believe we also do, since we are handling things for you and you guys aren't handling in-house, we get to help you with your OSHA reporting requirements as well as your Medicare reporting requirements. So that is stuff that you guys don't have to do on your own. So that's where we step in. And then we also provide various trainers for staff to assist with work comp, what's the word I'm looking for? Orientation type stuff, like how to fill out an incident report, a new department head having to do all this stuff for the first time. So we can assist with that as well.
Thanks, Peggy.
Talent.
So again, I'm not gonna go into these slides. I wanna make sure to save some time for John and Brian. And it's in here, the material's available to you. I just wanna encourage anyone sitting here, if you have a question afterwards or something you wish I would have touched on, please know that, again, we're not trying to dodge and run here. We want to respect the time. Reach out. Give me a call, give me an email. Pretty easy to get a hold of. WEMEC, you can ask Deb for either one of those. I'm sure she'd be happy to provide it. Love to answer any questions you might have. Thanks for being a member. John, you're going to come up and wow with some property discussion? Can I do one more slide? You can stand, you don't have to sit back down. So I do want to show you one last slide. We had on here your partnership funds. One of the programs we implemented last year was a partnership program. We wanted to provide our members with an opportunity and a way to reduce their risk profiles, to access maybe training materials, things that they hadn't budgeted for possibly. And so each one of our members has $15,000 that they can use for those purposes. There's a breakdown of how you used yours. Well, it's just been a really successful program. Our members have taken to it. A lot of creative ways to reduce risk, because if you think about this, we truly are in it together with the other members, right? So if their risk profile is getting better, if their losses go down, that's good for them, but it's also good for you and good for women. So anyhow, that's a program I just wanted to make mention of. And now I will hand it over to you, and I think you just want me to leave the slide up? Okay. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you, Palin. And thank all of you for the opportunity to meet with you this evening and share a little bit of information about the Municipal Property Insurance Company. There are some slides in your packet. You can go through them. They have some information. And my plan is just to give you the executive summary so you kind of have an idea of what we do, who we are, and a little history about ourselves. But before I do that, I just really want to thank all of you for your leadership, for stepping forward into the positions that you're now in or have been in for a while. It's so important. We get to work with municipalities all across Wisconsin, counties, cities, villages, and to see the people who are really doing the work for your community, for us is a great part of our job. So I just really want to thank you for your service and really appreciate what you're doing and what you're planning to do for the county. My name is John Vos. I am the underwriting manager for the Municipal Property Insurance Company. I am also the underwriter for Chippewa County. Brian Bergman in the back is our program manager and also our underwriter, and he helps me out a lot to stay straight. Give you just a little brief history. Up until 2015, the state of Wisconsin had a property fund, and they insured most of the counties, cities, and villages in the state. In 2015, the state decided to get out of the insurance business and drop the property fund. 3 different organizations, WEMEC being one of them, got together and said, we need a property insurance company. So they formed the Municipal Property Insurance Company in 2015, so next year will be our 10-year anniversary. That first year, we picked up about 200 policies from the fund and wrote the policies. As of right now, we have just shy of 600 policies across the state of Wisconsin. We only do municipal insurance. We only do insurance in Wisconsin, and we write about 80% of the counties, villages, and cities in the state. And why do we write so many? For 3 reasons. 1, we have very competitive premiums because we understand that tax dollars pay our premiums, and all of our money, all of our resources, and all of our expenses, and everything we spend and earn stays right here in Wisconsin. We are not owned by an outside agency. Our headquarters is in Madison. We have a team of 5 people. Alan mentioned lean and mean. Yeah, we're lean and mean. For Chippewa County, for instance, we write $107 million of your property. That includes buildings, that includes property within the buildings, that includes items that might be in police vehicles, it might be in fire engines, might include parks, equipment, might include radio towers, also includes about 30 road bridges that you have over recreational trails, here in the county. We also insure a little over $19 million of what we call contractors' equipment. That's the equipment that your DPW, Parks Department, and others use as resources. Could be lawnmowers, could be snow blowers, all of those things. We insure that also. Across the state of Wisconsin, we insure a total that exceeds $27 billion of property insurance for the state of Wisconsin. Now, one of the things that we're very, very proud of is when you look at what we do, I mentioned earlier about us keeping our premiums very competitive. Another thing we do is we look at our coverages and work to provide the very best coverages that are available in the market. And we're consistently evaluating our policy. Usually every couple of years, we're enhancing our coverages. We just did it recently. We're going to do it again in a couple of months while keeping our premiums down at the same time. But the third really key factor is our service. We build our customer base on relationships. We get to know people like Deb, people like Tracy, people that work in your community to say, okay, how can we help you? We understand that Deb has 1,000 other things to do other than just handling insurance. So how can we make her job easier? How can we make it easy when you file a claim, easy when you buy a piece of equipment to get it insured? We try to do all those things to make it fast. And as a result, our retention ratio, year after year after year, the lowest it's ever been is 99.5%. And we keep adding new customers all the time. So I'm proud to be part of the organization, very, very thankful that you are members with us and that we get to provide your property insurance along the way. And one of the things that we do provide, which to me is a great benefit, is we provide a free appraisal for all of the property that the county owns. Every 5 years, we have an appraisal company that works for us, we have a contract with. They come in and they took a look at all your county property and say, this is how much it's worth. That way, you can be assured that if there is a loss, you're going to get full value for the property because we don't depreciate the property. We pay replacement cost. If a building that the county owns is destroyed in a storm or destroyed in a fire, we rebuild that piece of property. That's what we do. We make bad days go away. That's what we're here for. So that kind of gives you a little flair of who we are and what we are. Ryan, did I miss anything? But again, there's information in there. We provide all sorts of coverages. We cover airports, we cover golf courses, we cover your recreational bridges, we cover your radio towers that you have, we cover all of your buildings. The only thing we don't do is roadway bridges. Those are covered elsewhere. But from a property standpoint, that's what we do. So let me stop. I know I kind of done real quick, and I know insurance is so exciting topic I always talk about. Does anyone have any questions I can answer? Yes, sir.
Supervisor Lee Hennick, why not the other 20%?
Why not the other 20%? Give me 3 years. Okay. Is that, we started with probably about 20% of the market. We have about 80% of the market, and we're working to continue to do that. I do think that probably over the next 2.5 years, we'll be somewhere around 90% of the market, from there. And sometimes one of the reasons to, and I wasn't trying to be facetious with my answer to you, but one of the reasons why some entities, some municipalities, they may have an insurance agent that works in that community that is very important to the community, and they want to have, their policy with that particular person.
So it's not an economic reason?
Not usually. It's usually a relationship reason. Anything else I can ask? Thank you all. Thank you. All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to economic development with Charlie Walker and Randy Schultz.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, county supervisors, for stepping up, serving. We appreciate everything you do. We are going to give a presentation about the best department, the best organization. It's economic development. It's actually the funnest, but also one of the most important. And we'll talk about the process of economic development. And understand that it is a process. So as anyone, you're laughing because it's a process. It can get crazy. So as an elected official, every decision that you make is important. And how economic development starts, it's an essential element of the strategic plan. You start with a regional strategic plan. There are 7 elements, and communities have regional plans. Economic development is the 7th strategic part of that. The county has one, so economic development is an element, we call it, of the strategic plan. The bottom line is, in Chippewa Falls, we brand it as a great place to raise a family and a business. So the story that you heard tonight is about the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors and their innovation. You heard in 1987 getting together to form an insurance company. You also are going to hear in about that time about economic development and basically, see if I do this right, because sometimes I go backwards. Did it work? Okay, so economic development is mostly unseen. You talk about the Titanic and what you see of the big projects, and when you see all those are really cool, but most of what economic development happens is under the water. You're never going to hear about it. You never know all the work that goes into it, and it's just so. But keep that in mind as a process. It is really interesting because you get a little bit glimpse. The press releases are cool, but there's a lot of other stuff that's going under the current that is so cool. And think about a community of 100 people. I like to tell stories. So hypothetically, let's think of a community of 100 people. Those people have police protection, fire protection, street and sewers. They pay their taxes. That's 100 people paying taxes, right? And the cost of those roads and that fire department continues to go up every year. So what happens to the 100 people? That tax burden, right? You increase your taxes, that 100 people pay more taxes. Well, there comes to a point in economics, the ability and willingness at balancing. So hypothetically, you raise your taxes. 2 people cannot afford or unwilling to pay those taxes, and they move out. So now you have 98 people. You still have to pay the roads. You still have to pay the fire department. You still have to, right? You still have those expenses, except 98 people were burning that tax burden. Well, all of a sudden, the government, which would be you, are forced to make decisions. Either you reduce the services because you have to stop paving some roads. We have 98 people. 2 of them leave because they want their trash collected and they want their roads paved. So hypothetically, you have 96 people, right? And you still have to pay for the roads and the government and everything, right? So you raise taxes again. You see how the cycle can continue. I know. You say, okay, Charlie, that's on one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is, well, real simple. We start with 100 and we bring in 2 people, right? So you keep, and then you bring another 2 people. So now we have 104, 106. And so that's the side of the equation underneath in the community, imaginary community and economics that we're doing. We're trying to create that wealth so that we can continue to grow and wealth is created. And that's the bottom of the tide. That's the hard work that comes in to play. Make sure I do that. There it is. So this is the chart, in essence, that talks about economic development. And on the far right, it's why we do what we do. But when you look at everything you build, you end up with infrastructure, public safety, and as you do economic development, you can fund all these things through wealth creation and job creation and capital expansion. The end of this basically says government needs economic development, so it makes sure it has a future tax base. That's the bottom line. Let's talk about some foundations, because I told you we're going to come back to 1987. I think that was the year that Chippewa County was, and we can brag. This county has been a leader and an innovator in this state since 1987. You heard on the insurance side, you hear on the finance side, just the way you as a body attack things and do things, and it's just cool. In 1987, there was the form of the Chippewa Valley Economic Development Council. That was an ad hoc group where it wanted to do just exactly that, compete with other communities to try to create jobs and be the forerunner. The Chippewa County Economic Development was created at leading the effort between what we call now, you'll hear it all the time, a PPP, a public-private partnership. Back in 1987 and 1992, those PPPs were never talked about. This board did that. They were very innovative and said, let's get a public-private partnership going. And that was the objective, was in Cadott, in Stanley, in Bloomer, in Chippewa Falls. There were all these organizations that were trying to create jobs. Let's pull them together and let's have one voice, one group working together called regionalism. That again, going back to our history at that time, very innovative to be doing regional. From that aspect, what happened is you came up with Momentum West, you came up with Chippewa Valley Innovation Center. There's a lot of regional partnerships where Chippewa County and the staff and the leadership have helped do that innovative. So if anything I leave you with tonight, think of how cool it is to sit there to know that there have been leaders before you that have been innovative, looking for the forwardness, trying to make the place a better place. And that's why I thanked all of you for doing what you're doing. Chippewa County, of course, has had, in economic development, we've had 27 years of straight, that even prior to me, my predecessor, of national, state, and regional recognition for what we do. We were funded, the whole idea was that every community would put, and I'm going to tell you how we're funded, every community would put $1 in per population, and then the county would have a contract for professional services, and then we would, on the private side, go out and raise money. We have 102 private sector investors that contribute money into a fund to do economic development, and the communities, all except Chippewa Falls. The city of Chippewa Falls is the only city that does not participate, and all the others do, put $1 per population, and then we exercise the economic development program. That is kind of overseen by a board of, the only elected official will be the head of the Economic Development Committee. I think he was appointed. Jim, congratulations, you're in for a treat. And join 18 other private sector individuals that will basically, are my bosses, that will institute what's called the strategic plan, which is an element of the counties and added to be professional services. So in essence, we are your professional economic development, consultants. It's a great model. It's still being used. Communities are still trying to figure out how to do it. As we talk, Dunn County is trying to figure out how the hell to do it because we did it and it's working. So they're doing a neat model as well, and they're doing working towards that. Now, we talk about our goals. Economic development is private investment, job creation, tax base expansion, wealth creation, and higher quality life and a higher standard of living. We could measure that. One of the things that's not in there that we have a hidden thing, we'll call that a talent attraction. It's called Stop the Out-Migration. So when kids graduate New Auburn, we want them to come back. We want them to stay. We want to keep the kids and the talent here. So I'll call that talent retention and talent attraction. And we'll talk about some of that as well. So the pillars of economic development, it's really, there is a science. And the last board, I think it was in December, we had a really cool, I drove down, if you remember, those that were here, an actual target industry cluster, and talk about the mathematical and the economics and the science behind how you do some of that. But there is a science. And in this is an actual economic theory that in graduate school you learn about. It's called the leaky bucket. And so basically in the leaky bucket, it's pretty self-explanatory. As we bring water or wealth in, our bucket naturally through economics is going to have leaks, and that's going to come out. And so give you some examples of some leaks, what just happened. HSHS, big leak in our bucket. So we are scrambling to plug that leak. If you look at it like that, that's what we're doing. Costco, right? Costco is a leak in our bucket because how many of us zip over to Costco? It's right along the other county line. But that's out-migration and a retail recruitment that we start to lose, right? So we have functions of how do we get back to some of those retails? How do we keep people shopping locally? How do we work with the Chamber of Commerce's, the Stanley Chamber, the Bloomer Chamber, the Chippewa Falls Chamber to put in these programs to shop local, to do all that? Because then we have Amazon, right? And how does that, unless of course it's Mason Shoes, we want you to shop Mason, right? So that's kind of how, so our job is basically to plug the bucket of leaks. Put in some wealth. Let's talk about Farm Technology Days. I touched on it because I know Tuesday you guys got it. We are, since 2004 was the last time Chippewa County had Farm Technology Days. It is the largest trade show exhibit for agriculture. It's going to be hosted on the closed farm. We are fortunate to have a music venue called Country Fest. Country Fest is helped sponsoring it with Closed Farms. That's going to be the location. August 13th through the 15th. You haven't heard much about it because we're doing it a little bit different. We're doing it the economic development marketing way. Usually our ag extension will do it. They'll get out there and run a lot of TV commercials and we're kind of creating hype. You're going to start seeing some stuff. This is my report to Farm Technology Days. We are at 83% full. So all vendor space is full. We have raised right at $143,000 in sponsorships. As you probably heard, I was watching that the county board of supervisors did spot us $20,000, but the way I work is I don't tap into it unless I absolutely have to. Lori, I don't think I'm going to have to tap into it if we continue to go how we're doing it. So thank you. We want to spread the word, though, because we still want it to be the best farm show that they have ever had in 50 years. And we're on that way to do that. Okay, so that covers that. The thing that is important to know is it's competitive. There are people who are trying to put holes in our bucket. There are people called communities that are putting holes in our bucket. They want to take our great companies and move them over and create it's a very competitive world in economic development. So I leave you with, think of the bucket, think of the competitiveness, and people trying to take our companies, put holes in our bucket. And so our job is to make sure that that doesn't happen. At the beginning of the slide, economic development is a very vague. What is it? What does it mean? Weapons of mass destruction, how do you define it? Well, I gave you a definition of economic development there. I'm not going to read it because it's in your packet. But we do have a professional economic developer. This is the time that I usually don't brag about myself, but I'll brag about myself this time for you guys so you'll know who. So just think about innovation. Chippewa County helped go out and recruit one of the best in the nation. I'm one of the top 50 economic developers. I'm certified only 1,400. I've been doing this. We know what the heck we're doing. And it shows on how we're doing it. So we have a professional economic development. A lot of communities, they raise them, they train them, they try to teach them. I actually please don't throw anything. Graduate of Angelo State University, University of Texas, graduate school. So that's where the accent comes from. So please don't throw things at me. But that's my background. I went to school. This is what I do. Economic development is my passion. And I like to have a team. And my whole deal, as Randy and the team would tell you, is if it's got to be fun, right? If we're not having fun, then something's wrong. And kindness, and we can disagree, and we can argue about strategies, and at the end of the day, we're family, and we all come together and have fun. So let's talk about business recruitment and attraction. That's a strategy. That's a simple one. That's the one that gets the most glory, but that's the smallest amount of what we do. Again, let's talk about innovation. Back in the day, Chippewa County supervisors understood taking a county farm and moving it into an industrial park because Chippewa County didn't have the product, didn't have the location. That's pretty cool. That took a lot of effort and collaboration, and that is Lake Wissota Business Park. And that's been one of the assets that we have going for us. We also now have industrial parks. The county, you guys helped push the effort in the Stanley Industrial Park to get it certified shovel-ready. So we're one of the only communities in Wisconsin that has 2 state certified shovel-ready sites. So business retention, I'll go back through business retention and expansion. We call that a BEAR, B-E-A-R, because every community in Northwoods needs a strong BEAR. And businesses that are existing are the #1 drivers of job creation. So we take care of the ones we have here, and we do it very aggressively, and don't mess with Mama Bear. So business creation is economic gardening. So you're going to hear some things about that. Human capital and talent, I kind of talked about that. That's my trick word of stop the out-migration. We've done some things on manufacturing boot camp and some cool things. And then placemaking goes on it. You've got this in your packet, so I'm just going to kind of tell you that it is evolving. It's a process. The old days of smokestacks chasing, we don't do. We have a target industry. We go after that. We recruit talent. And then when you attract somebody and talent here, it's also about getting them involved in the community. So when we find top talent, we also put them in volunteers, and because this is a great community, but it's so hard to make friends. So we just make sure that we connect people to the right organizations in the Chamber of Commerce or the right churches that might help them stay a little longer. And we've got those programs as well. So going into the business attraction, I'm going to go over this real fast. It's kind of a funnel. We start with a lot of companies that are interested, and companies want to know, like Costco, that a market is available. So someone has to sell them that, tell them the prospectus, and tell them, hey, we're open for business. Here's a market. Here's what you can do. And then you work the funnel all the way down. And for everything, really, it's about getting crossed off the list. So they look for reasons to cross you off the list. So reputation matters, and how you treat the companies matter, and how you treat the real estate brokers, the developers matter, and how they're handled, because they have a network and capital investment and angel investment groups, how you treat them and how you handle them professionally and provide the information that they need. That's a lot of what we do. So reputation is important, and I would hold the argument that Chippewa County has an outstanding reputation. Bear business expansion. This is, again, 85% of existing jobs are created by existing companies. So we try to help them. We meet with them. Some of you will be involved in some of these meetings where we have normative conversations about what's happening and how they can do better. And that forms these strategies of why we do these lunch and learns and why we do certain things like export and why we go after foreign direct investment and how we work on the supply chain. So it's all tied to that strategic plan. So here's some things that you can always go to our website, chippewa-wi.com. And this is every community needs a bear. We have podcasts, we have bear visits, we have discussions, we have lunch and learns. We have on your table the newsletter. The newsletter gets printed quarterly, but it comes out monthly. So if you sign up on the website, you'll get an electronic version of the newsletter when it comes out monthly. But typically, I'm not really good at it because we print 150 of the ones that are in print, and then I get them, and then if you have any extra, I give them to Tracy and she puts them in your deal. So sometimes you get a bunch of them, and look in your box. If I have extra, you'll get them. Otherwise, they are on the website as well. So business creation and economic gardening, that's some cool stuff that we're doing. We do some Hatch, some Chippewa Valley Innovation Center. I know you wanted to know about that, but that's, again, going back in history, innovative. Can you take Chippewa County, Eau Claire County, the city of Eau Claire, Chippewa County Economic Development, Eau Claire Economic Development, come together when the Banbury, the Uniroyal closes, and create an incubator for manufacturing and help entrepreneurs that have an idea and come out there. So we're doing a really good job. That's been around. We're reinventing some stuff, but we'll have an open house. Come out and look at the Chippewa Valley Innovation Center. It's a really cool thing. Most of the thing, notice I said Chippewa Falls and Chippewa County is a great place to raise a family and a business. So the entrepreneurial ecosystem is important that we continue to promote that and do some things to make sure that we're friendly to the entrepreneurs. So that's the Hatch. That's the Chippewa Valley Angel Group. All the things that this board's predecessors saw the vision to invest in and to move forward on. Entrepreneur startups. We do the Eagle Eye platform, which is information brokering and using the website to pull up business plans. We're a feeder to SBDC on the university. So if you have a business person, you know anybody who wants to start a business and they need some help, send them my way. I will connect them to the right people to get that business plan done for them. And it helps the banks so that we can do that. Speaking of banks, we have, and you'll notice that in the budget, that we were innovative and we seeded and led the effort to establish the Regional Business Fund. That was cool. It's fantastic. It's running. But with that, you were also smart enough not to put all your eggs in one basket, and you held back some money. I think it was about $800,000. You could correct me. I think there's $600,000, and we have a revolving loan fund that we try to use as last resort. We try to leverage it where we can. So sometimes you'll see an application come from, that's the Economic Development Committee. See, I told you wanted to be on the Economic Development Committee because it's just fun. So the committee, then the Chippewa Economic Development Corporation is your local revolving loan fund person that we can, because I'm on the video, there are 17 loans that we approved this year since as interest rates go up, we see more activity. So when you see Mr. Supervisor Hall appointed Deb Chilson Ryan, that's the purpose, is they serve on that regional business fund loan committee that approves those loans. They've been working really hard too. All right, so talent skills, STEAM. You saw STEAM, that's the first thing, very creative, worked with a high school, science, technology, engineering, and math. The A comes from Texas A&M University, that is arts. So it used to be STEM. Chippewa Falls added an A, an arts, following the Texas A&M model of bringing in arts and architecture and cool. And it's every other year we raise scholarships for STEAM Night, and that's successful as well. Critical Manufacturing Skill Set, it's a program that we started that's in CVTC still going. So it's just awesome. You're going to see on May 17th, mark your calendar because that's our annual meeting. Everyone's invited. We are going to have a special presentation there about some youth apprenticeships that's really been fantastic that's been going on. So I'm going to start, as I wrap up, I'm going to leave you with the conversation of product is a must. You can't sell anything unless you have a product. Without a product, you don't have a project. So some of the things that we're working on is the next business park. There's some of you will be involved in that. The county administrator spoke real highly. Some of that's, you're in closed session. You don't want to know where, when, and how, but we've been talking about that, and that will come, I think, pretty aggressively and fast. There's been some good news on that front. We'll be picking that up. So where's the next business park? The county knew that not every community has the heavy lift to do that. And so the burn rate, if you saw Lake Wissota Business Park, and you saw how it's going in, and you see now the activity that Stanley Industrial Park is going to go, we have to be prepared for where's the next home for these existing businesses. So a lot of them say, well, it's new businesses. Well, that's true too, but 80%, remember, if you look at Lake Wissota Business Park, I'd gather 80% of those tenants were existing businesses that needed to expand. So basically, we'll be looking at wayfinding. The new way is how do you improve your product? And I just throw this in this because I wanted you to see the teamwork. When you look at the Chippewa County Parks and Rec, they just finished a master plan. What did they address? They addressed streetscapes and signs and trying to make the product improvement there. We improved the facade fund program. We just finished that, where now it was only at $10,000. We kicked it up to $30,000 because now the cost of paint is more. So we've been doing some cool things. And then broadband. I tell you, when you look at a county in Wisconsin, there's no better county that's been moving to get broadband than this county. We started 10, 15 years ago, way before broadband was cool. Again, because leaders like you yourselves have had the conversations way ahead. And we've got great talent and staff, and they're smart, and they bring great ideas, and you guys help implement those ideas. And so that's my economic presentation. And I have any questions, because I know Supervisor Flynn has one. First question.
You know what? I've worked with you before when I was on the city council. I'm excited to be on the committee where I'll be getting schooled in a great education like I did before. And you know what? I appreciate all the hard work that you do for our community. You've done a lot of good work over the years. So I'm excited to be on your committee. So
excellent. We just welcome anybody with any questions. I'm available. Give me a call. Give Randy a call. We'll meet with you. We'll talk about everything we're doing. There's some things that you're going to see I can't talk about, so I use code names. We know that. So that is because I signed a non-disclosure agreement, and so I try to be as transparent as I can, and we work with code names and try to protect that because it is a competitive environment. So I want to thank everybody again. Last chance for questions. Going once. Up. Yes, sir.
Supervisor Hennick, what's your contact email?
It's ccedc@chippewa-wi.com. That's ccedc@chippewa-wi.com. Don't forget to put the dash, wi.com. And the boss here is going to send it out. She's going to send it out. So anytime you want to come by, have a cup of coffee, mark your calendar. May 17th. One question. Yes, sir.
Hey, Charlie, how's it going?
It's going fantastic.
You do a good job. I appreciate everything you do, but I just got one question about the leaking bucket, because I think we're going to have a big leaking bucket in my township here pretty soon with Eau Claire.
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing anything proactive to try to plug that leak, or no?
Yes, we are. We're doing, and let's talk about that.
Yeah, I'd appreciate to talk to you about it sometime so that we can see if you guys are being proactive about that. I know you probably are, but.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, let's talk. I'll show you some things and we'll talk about, and congratulations on selling your facility there in Four Corners. It was good.
Thank you.
All right, so May 17th at the Eau Claire Event District at 7 in the morning is our annual meeting. That's the largest gathering of folks, business leaders. There'll be about 500 there, and we'll have an interesting speaker. And then we're going to go play golf, and then we're back to Wissota Golf. Now, we have a charity golf tournament, and this is cool. We're going to get run out of town. When we talk about BEAD has this thing now. That's broadband equity, right? And we're trying to get a hold of this. And our co-op telephone companies apply for these BEAD grants to help expand broadband. Well, we know that the federal government is going to talk about enhancements, right? We heard that they want to score these next ones on enhancements. In other words, what is the community doing beyond letters of support? Because I don't know what enhancements are. So we decided our enhancement is a golf tournament. And at that golf tournament, we're going to raise some money. We're trying to raise about $5,000 to the veterans. It's going to go back to the veterans, and I think it's coming back to the county veteran. As you know, there's some veterans that are having a hard time getting equipment to get on for telemedicine. And with the closure of HSHS in our community, we want to make sure that, they have the ability to get online. So this is the big picture. We're going to be able to use this golf tournament as a score, hopefully extra points, when our local folks apply for these broadband grants. It's way out there. It's innovative. It's a stretch, but we didn't know what enhancements were. So we're going to be the only county in Wisconsin that's going to say, we are so desperate for broadband grants, we held a golf tournament. Okay? A fundraising golf tournament. So that's kind of how we're doing it. If you like to golf, I know I'm twisting his arm now to be out there to raise money for the veterans in a good cause. Thank you for your time. I know I took over it, but I appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you, Charlie. So now we'd like to welcome Sarah Diedrich Kasdorf to tell us about the Wisconsin Counties Association Board roles and responsibilities. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Diedrich Kasdorf. I'm the Director of Outreach and Member Engagement at the Wisconsin Counties Association. I want to thank you so much for the invite to come back here. I was here 2 years ago, and I think I learned my lesson. I should have learned 2 years ago. I don't want to follow Charlie. He was very engaging 2 years ago. He was again tonight. And I was like, next time in 2 years from now, if I get invited back, switch the order on the agenda so I don't have to follow Charlie. But anyway, so I have been with WCA for 32 and a half years now. I spent the first 30 of those as a lobbyist, working on behalf of county government. But instead I decided after 30 years I wanted to do something different. So I'm now on the road talking to more county boards. And I have to tell you, I find it much more exciting than it is going across the street from our office and talking to legislators. Been there, done that too many times. So thank you again. I love coming up and talking to you guys. Before I start on roles and responsibilities, I have to do a couple of shameless plugs. So I am hoping on Tuesday you all got your welcome packet from WCA. How many of you have opened it? Okay, some of you have. Yes, I know. I teach at our county officials workshops, which I will be doing a plug for in just a moment. And I'll say, well, these materials we sent you, and I get these blank stares. And they're like, well, how do I get a copy of this? I'm like, well, you should have one in your welcome packet. So I'm going to tell you what's in it really quickly so you don't miss out on some events and you have an opportunity to take advantage of some things that might be time sensitive. So first thing I just want to show you real quickly in the welcome packet is this brochure. It tells you about WCA, the services we provide. In the interest of time, not going to tell you all about that tonight, but just again, take a look at this. We also have a parliamentary procedure card in here for you. If you come to COWS, I'll teach you how to use it. We have a brochure for our county officials workshops. I know you guys have a lot of new supervisors on your board. We are going to be in Eau Claire on May 8th. So I hope all of you take advantage of this day-long training opportunity. Come see us at COWS. You'll learn an awful lot. I will tell you, we will overwhelm you if you are a brand new county board member, but then come 2 years from now and it will make a lot more sense to you. So please come to COWS. And then we also have in that packet as well, the county officials handbook. So if there's something that you hear at our presentation at COWS or tonight, and you say, now how do I get that presentation again? A lot of what we talk about at these training sessions are kind of written here in this book, so you can go back and have a reference. And we really hope that in the writing of this, we try to make it simple and easy and understandable and not too much legalese, because I'm not a lawyer. So when I read stuff, I tell our attorneys sometimes too much legal. Can we back that off a bit and make it so those of us who aren't lawyers can understand it? So again, want to make sure you guys saw that as well. And then the last thing I did put on your desk, just for fun, because I had them with me, some county stickers with all the counties listed on them. They're great on your computer or your water jug, whatever it is you want to put them on. If you want more, after the meeting, let me know. I'm happy to give you a few more in case you have multiple devices you want to put them on. All right, with that, that's enough of that. All right, let's start talking about roles and responsibilities. And I should probably remember to go this. All right, that direction. Okay, so county roles and responsibilities. When we talk about the authority of county government, and probably the best place to look if you have a question about county government is probably to look at Chapter 59 of the statutes. Now, I refer to Chapter 59 of the statutes as kind of the Bible for county government because it is where you will find such things as county board authority. You will find such things as county governance structures. You will learn about the powers and duties of county officers. You will find a number of statutory things that counties are allowed to do. But as I talk about Chapter 59, I want to make sure everybody understands as well that Chapter 59 is not the only statute that we need to be aware of as members of the county board. So for example, Chapter 19 of the statutes talks about the public records law, the open meetings law, the code of ethics for local public officials, and I understand you're going to be hearing about 2 of those 3 things after I'm done talking. So those are very important statutes just to be aware of. So Chapter 59 doesn't have everything quite in it that you need to be aware of. Also, when we talk about those things called state mandated services, a lot of those aren't found in Chapter 59 as well. They're found throughout many other places within the statute. So for example, if you work on health, if you're on the Health and Human Services Committee, the statutory, chapters for that you need to be aware of, or at least your staff needs to be aware of, are like 46, 48, 49, 51, 55, 9, 38. So there's a number of statutes that references health and human services. Public health, I think, is 252. Highways is, Chapter 83 of the statutes. So there's a lot of statutes out there that impact county government. Again, no expectation for you to know about all of those, but you will learn about a number of them depending upon what committees that you serve on. All right, the next point here. Counties are a body corporate that can sue and be sued. And really, counties exercise their authority as a body corporate through the adoption of resolutions and through the enactment of ordinances. It's also important to keep in mind, though, that county powers are really limited by state statute. And what we mean by that is, unlike our municipal partners, they have what is known as constitutional home rule authority. So cities, for example, can undertake any function as long as that function is not prohibited by statute. The exact opposite is true for counties. We can only undertake such actions as long as it is specifically allowed by state statute or authorized by state statute. So for those of you who have sat on maybe a city council before, you'll notice that is a pretty significant difference between counties and municipalities. And then the last point on this slide is that we talk counties are governed, of course, as you know, by a county board of supervisors. That is probably the most obvious thing I'm going to say tonight. And the state statutes talk about what our county boards can look like. They talk again about the powers and authorities of county boards. The statutes even tell us what the maximum size that our county boards can be based upon our population size. Now, just for fun, to make this a little more interactive, those of you who have heard this before, don't answer. There are no prizes tonight for getting it correct, because some of you, I know, Carrie, you've probably heard me do this 5-6 times now between cows and my coming here. So just for fun, which county board in the state of Wisconsin has 7 members on their county board? Guesses? Pepin. Y'all have a little sticker that has all the names of the counties on it? So, eventually we can get through all 72, right? Just start calling out county names.
Florence.
Not Florence, no. They do have a small board, but not Langlade. Anyone?
Vilas.
Not Vilas.
Juneau.
Not Juneau. I'll give you a couple more guesses because there are 72 counties. We could be here a long time. All right, it's Menominee. Menominee County has the smallest county board in the state, and they are structured very uniquely and that their county board is made up of their 6 town board members plus 1 at-large individual. So they have a different structure and makeup of their board than, say, other counties across the state. All right, so 7 for Menominee. Which county has 38 members of their county board? Who said it? I heard somebody say it.
Marathon.
Yes, I was gonna say, somebody whispered it. Did you whisper it? Or did you hear somebody else whisper it and you stole their answer? Cheating is not allowed here.
He probably heard you talk before.
Yep, we cannot cheat. So and it also so happens to be that, Marathon County has the largest landmass as well out of all the counties across the state. So you've learned 2 fun facts about Marathon County today. So I will say that many years ago, our county boards actually had, it wasn't unusual to have 60 or 70 members on the county board. So stop and think about it. For instance, we would have to, quadruple the size of this room if we had boards of 60 or 70 people. And depending upon what your county board rules say with regard to how long you can talk on each motion, if it's Robert's rules, 2 times 10 or 20 minutes, imagine how long those county board meetings would last if everybody chose to speak the maximum time on every single motion. So I think we've come a long way in decreasing the size of the boards and becoming a bit more efficient. All right, I want to talk a little bit about administrative home rule right now. So it wasn't until the mid-1980s that counties had the authority, gained some authority over their own administrative structures. At that time, counties went to the state legislature and said, we would like to have the ability to structure ourselves, in a way that might be different than our neighboring county. So the legislature didn't give us constitutional home rule like the municipalities got, but instead we have administrative home rule, which means that every county may exercise any organizational or administrative power subject only to the Constitution and to any enactment of the legislature which is of statewide concern and which uniformly affects every county. So basically what this means is we have as counties flexibility with regard to such things as our committee structures. We have flexibility with regard to what services may be found in each county department. But again, this authority with regard to administrative home rule is not without limitation. And probably the best example of that is back in 2010, the Ozaukee County Administrator asked the Attorney General whether or not he could give his appointment over boards and commissions, his authority for appointment of members to boards and commissions, to the county board chair, saying the county board chair is already making county committee appointments. I want them to do the boards and commissions as well. And the Attorney General said no, because that statutory authority rests by 5918 of the statutes with the county administrator. The county administrator did not have the ability to give that authority to the county board chair. So again, a lot of things we have some authority over, but again, there can be limitations with that as well. So let's talk about self-organization, another concept that we hear periodically within the county system. So self-organization was a statute, and it was passed in the mid-1970s that tried to give counties some additional flexibility with regard to specifically how their county boards operate. There are right now, I believe, 52 or 53 counties that are self-organized. Now, to become a self-organized county, and Chippewa County is one of them, so to become a self-organized county, Chippewa County had to pass an ordinance and then submit that ordinance to the Secretary of State's office. Then your county is considered to be a self-organized county. But in and of itself, that no changes would have been made to your structure. Once you are self-organized, there are 3 things that you can take additional action on because you would be a self-organized county. The first one of those is use of staggered terms for county board elections. This is where county clerks cringe. Because can you imagine if your county board, half of you were up for election every single year? You'd have to listen to me every year instead of every 2 years. You would have to redo your committee structure every single year, bring everybody up to speed on those committees every single year. You would get nothing done as a board because you'd be doing nothing but spending your time reorganizing yourselves and, you know, bringing people up to speed as to what's going on. So there's not a single county in the state that utilizes staggered terms, nor do we recommend that for the reasons I just stated. Compensation of supervisors is another option that counties can undertake if you are self-organized. So under the current state statutes, there are limitations with regard to the number of meetings supervisors can be paid a per diem on each and every year. And if you are a self-organized county, you as a board could take action to change your compensation structure, to change those yearly limits, or to, you know, most counties use it to pay their supervisors a salary as opposed to paying per diems for meeting attendance. And then the third thing that you can do is you can change the method by which vacancies are filled on the county board. Right now, if you're not a self-organized county, vacancies on the board are filled through the county board the county board chair making a recommendation to the county board, and the county board having the option to approve or reject that recommendation. I will say I'm only aware in my 32 years of one county that went to a special election to fill a county board seat. Again, there's lots of good reasons, and your clerk, I'm sure, can tell you all of them, why we don't want to hold a special election to fill a county board seat. Just the cost of that alone to the county would be rather significant. So again, out of these three different things that you can do as a self-organized county, the only one I really see counties doing anything with is the compensation of supervisors. All right, let's switch gears a bit and talk a little bit now about county government structure. So according to the state statute, each county has to have one of three forms of county government. You have to have either a county executive, a county administrator, or an administrative coordinator. And depending upon what county you are in, each of these forms can look a little different. So this is a map, and I'm not going to tell you that this map is completely up to date because things are ever changing within counties. It seems that over the last year and a half to the present, we are actually seeing a number of counties begin to have discussions with regard to what their form of government is. In particular, those counties that have part-time administrative coordinators trying to move to a full-time administrator, which is what you guys have now. So, which I would argue is probably the preferred form of county government if you don't want to have a county executive. And as a county board, if you move to an executive, you lose a lot of power and authority. So you probably don't want to go that way as a board. But right now we have 12 counties that have elected county executives, somewhere around 33 that have a full-time county administrator, and then we have 8 that have a full-time administrative coordinator, many of those which are given the powers and authority for the most part of a county administrator. And then we have 19 other counties, because again, as I said, if you don't have somebody full-time in one of these positions, you have to make sure you assign somebody the title of administrative coordinator. That's required by law. I believe they are the person who gets the official state notices, which is why counties have to appoint somebody as one of those positions. You'll see counties that don't have one of these full-time positions appoint various people, different folks within their counties to that administrative coordinator role. Some appoint their county clerks. There's 4 that have appointed the county board chair, although there's an attorney general's opinion that says that the position of administrative coordinator and county board chair are incompatible, and you shouldn't do that, but we have 4 counties that do it anyway. Try really hard to, but actually there's 1 or 2 of them that we're working with right now. Sometimes it's the highway commissioner. It all just depends. But just as you can see, we have various ways in which counties fulfill that statutory mandate to have either an executive, an administrator, or an administrative coordinator. So I'm going to talk very quickly about each of these 3 forms of government. I am going to go very quickly on the county executive and the administrative coordinator because you don't have those positions, and I can't imagine you're anticipating going that direction anytime soon. So the county executive, I want to compare that to another position that you might be familiar with. You might say the county executive is the chief executive officer of the county. So they're very much like the governor of the state or the president of the United States. That's kind of the job of the county executive. So that position is either created by the county board or it can be created by petition and referendum. I think that happened in maybe one county across the state where it was created by petition and referendum. But again, county executive is an elected position, which means that they are accountable to the voters and not accountable to the county board like the county administrator is. And again, we'll get to that in another slide or two. The county executive does appoint and supervise department heads subject to board confirmation. They also appoint members to boards and commissions. They're required to submit an annual budget to the county board, of which the county board then takes action on and returns back to the county executive. And the county executive has veto authority over that budget. They have veto authority over ordinances and resolutions that the county board may adopt. However, the county board does have the ability to override those vetoes by a 2/3 vote. All right, let's talk a little bit about the county administrator, which is of course the form of government that you guys have here in Chippewa County. So the county administrator, excuse me, the authority of the county administrator is found in 5918 of the state statutes. It is an option for counties that have a population under 750,000. We have one county in the state over 750,000. They're required to have a county executive. The county administrator position is created by resolution of the board or by petition of referendum, and your county administrator is appointed by a majority vote of the county board. The county administrator serves, of course, as the chief administrative officer of the county. By statute, the county administrator shall take care that every county ordinance and state or federal law is observed, enforced, and administered within the county. Their job also, according to statute, is to coordinate and direct all administrative and management functions of the county government that aren't vested in other officers, boards, or commissions. The board, and I will say about that particular bullet point there, is that when you have a county administrator, I will say there is a real clear delineation of powers and duties within the county system. That makes it very easy to know when a situation arises, who is responsible for dealing with that situation. And in many times, it will be your county administrator will play a role in that, especially because, again, the county administrator, again, is responsible for coordinating all administrative and management functions. They appoint the department heads, so they work very closely with all of your department heads. The department heads do report to the county administrator. And when you have a county administrator, the department head supervises the administration of their department. And at that point, it is the job of the county board to perform advisory or policy-making functions as authorized by statute. And that last bullet point that says when you have a county administrator, the role of the board is policy-making, that is right there in the state statute. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit when we get to the role of the county board. But the duties and powers, again, of the county administrator, appointing members to boards and commissions, submitting an annual budget to the county board for approval. The qualifications for your county administrator are, again, found in 5918 of the statutes. The statutes say that you have to appoint your county administrator based solely on merit, and the board shall take into consideration training, experience, their administrative ability, as well as their general qualifications for the position. The statute does go on to say that no weight or consideration can be given to the board or given by the board for the residents, their nationality, or to political or religious affiliations. Again, because counties typically county boards are nonpartisan by design, elected in April. The intention is for your county administrator to be nonpartisan as well. Again, no weight or consideration given to their politics or religion. All right, county administrator. The county administrator is really, like we like to talk about, the sole employee of the county board. That means the county board has the authority to hire the county administrator. the county board also has the authority to remove the county administrator at any time that the board believes that the county administrator's conduct becomes unsatisfactory. And again, if there is a vacancy in the county administrator position, it is up to the county board to fill that vacancy. That vacancy is filled by a majority vote of the board. Now, 5919 is the county administrative coordinator position. Honestly, I don't even think it's, the slides are in your packet. I don't even think it's worth going through it. All right, so let's talk about the County Board of Supervisors at this point. So, as a member of the county board, you serve in a legislative capacity. That means that as a board, you set the policy direction for the county, and you do that in a number of different ways. You do that through the adoption of resolutions. You do that through the enactment of ordinances. You do that every year when you adopt your county budget. You do that when you adopt your county strategic plan. You do that when you adopt, your county's transportation plan, your comprehensive plan. All of those decisions that you make in those areas are really you serving in your legislative function and capacity and setting the policy direction for your particular county. Now, this says that no operational control resides with individual supervisors, and that is correct. Because your role is policy making, it means that you do not have operational control over the county departments. So you're not going to be going into the Health and Human Services Department, for example, and trying to run the department or telling the social workers there what their job and their role is. Instead, you set the broad policy decisions, the programs that you want the county to operate within those departments, and then it is up to the department head and the staff to carry those out. You'll see the term cooperative decision-making here. And I bring that up because if you were to read Chapter 59 of the statutes, and I'll tell you, it's really fascinating reading. If you ever can't fall asleep at night, pick up a statute book and read it. It will put you to sleep immediately. But when we talk about cooperative decision-making, what we really mean is that you as a board make all of your decisions as a board. When you look at the state statute, 59, I think it's 59, 52, 59, 53, something like that, you'll see the words in there a lot. A county board may or a county board shall. Nowhere anywhere do you really see an individual county board supervisor has the authority to. Instead, again, because you're setting the policy direction for the board and for your county, means you are acting cooperatively as a member of the board. It is the job of your administrator, your one single sole employee, to oversee the day-to-day operations of the county. Your role is to set policy. Again, see, supervisors, collective versus individual. We already talked about that. The one thing I will say that is interesting is when we talk about your titles as county board supervisors. Do you think that is really reflective of your job and the role that you perform in the county? No, it is not. And it's really very much a misnomer, so we like to say thank you, legislature, for creating confusion with the name. The reality is, when Wisconsin became a state, there were two primary forms of county government that were in existence in the country at the time. There was the New York model, which had county supervisors, and there was the Pennsylvania model, which had county commissioners. And I will say county commissioners, that system, there's more authority over day-to-day operations in the commission form of government than there is in the supervisor form of government. And at the time Wisconsin became a state, a decision was made that we were going to be county supervisors, meaning we make policy and not deal with the day-to-day operations of the county. So again, as a county board, you adopt policy, and that's not to say, that's where your job ends, because through your committee structure, You will hold staff accountable for implementing policy. You do that through county administration. So that means if you have a committee meeting and you guys have created a new program, certainly acceptable for you guys to ask for an update at your committee meeting about the progress of that new program. How are we doing? Do we have folks that are, participating in the program? Are we seeing success with the program? That type of thing. But ultimately, we like to talk, when we talk about your authority as policymakers, we like to say that you guys are visionaries. Now, that's a pretty big, powerful word, right? So how many times when you go home at night, does whoever greets you at the door call you a visionary? Do members of the public come up to you and do they say, thank you for all that work you do on the county board. You are such a visionary. You're doing a great job seeing, setting the policy trajectory for our county years in advance, right? Your job is not to talk about day-to-day operations, but really as a visionary, you guys are thinking about your county, what it's going to look like 5, 10, 15 years from now. And I'll say your economic development director that talked about, before me, who should go after me, the reality is he was talking about you guys setting long-term strategic visions on economic development. That same concept applies to the county board and the programs you want to operate, what you want your county to look like 5, 10, 15 years into the future. It's very much the same thing he talked about applies to your role as a member of the county board. So as county board members, you have a lot of functions that you do. You involve, you represent, you're accountable to the public. You determine the services that your county is going to provide. You're required to adopt a budget and set a tax levy. But you're required to, or you're not required to, you should, I should say, attend all of your meetings, participate in the discussions, and vote. Those are a lot of important functions as a member of the county board. But your primary function, again, is to enact policy. But before I get off this slide, I want to go back to involve, represent, and be accountable to the public. So for those of you who have been on the county board before, how many of you have received phone calls from constituents? Are they the kind of phone calls where they just thank you for being a visionary and say thanks for doing a great job on the county board?
Is visionary spending money?
Yeah. Or do the members of the public usually call you because they're not happy about something or they have a complaint? And so what we're going to talk about now is a little bit about what you do when you get those complaints. So let's say, for example, you have a constituent that lives on the county trunk highway and there's a big pothole in front of their driveway. They call you, they complain. How would you react and respond to that? Are you going to get a wheelbarrow and some hot mix and a shovel and a tamper and go out there and fill that pothole in front of your constituent's driveway? No, not your job as a county board member, right? Instead, you're going to talk to your single employee, which is Randy, and let him know there's an issue. Or if your county policy and custom allows, maybe you can talk to your highway commissioner. Okay? Now let's say that person calls and complains about a county employee. What do you do then? Do you go into the county department and start your own investigation about that employee? And you may laugh, but I tell you, I have heard stories of this before. And it causes a lot of problems when we have county board members start to investigate county employees. Not your role, not your job. Again, if somebody has a complaint about the service that they were provided, about the way they were treated by a county employee, that's what Randy's here for. That's what HR is here for. That's what your department heads are here for. So again, as much as we know as elected officials, you guys want to be responsive to those that put you in your elected positions. Again, there are certain limitations within that. All right. This I probably don't even have to show you because in all of my presentations, I show the Chippewa County Board rule that really defines what the role is of the county board compared to the role of county administration. Your board rules, and I hope it's still in there, still say it very, very well, very simply, very succinctly. So I'm not going to read it to you. Maybe for those of you that have, I will give you a little challenge. For those of you that have not read your county board rules from start to finish yet, find this section within your county board rules. All right, let's talk now about the role of the county board chair. So 5912 of the Wisconsin State Statute talks about the role of the county board chair. And there are some statutory duties that are listed in 5912 with regard to the county board chair. It says that the county board chair presides over meetings of the county board, countersigns all ordinances, and administers oaths. Now, I think we know that a county board chair typically does a lot more than that. The county board chair oftentimes will act as the spokesperson for the county. The county board chair is responsible for providing guidance and direction on moving issues through the board. This includes enforcing the rules of the county board, which sometimes, depending upon, the issues that come before your board, can sometimes be a lot of work. But again, that's an important role for the county board chair to play. The county board chair also typically appoints committee members subject to board confirmation, and you did that tonight, and that's 5913 of the state statutes. So I hope with all that stuff, I didn't scare your new county board chair with regard to all the roles he now plays, but it's important. All right, standing committees and functions. Now in Wisconsin, our county boards typically operate through the use of a really strong committee structure. And so that means, in the way things work, is that, in most counties in their board rules, if a resolution gets introduced, it gets referred to a committee, and then the committee is required to make a recommendation with regard to that particular resolution or ordinance. I would argue that a lot of the heavy lifting with regard to policy development in your role in developing policy as a board is done by the committees. It is the job of the committees to really take a look at that resolution or ordinance, to really study the issue, to seek out recommendations from staff and others, to learn about what that particular policy issue is all about, and then ultimately make that recommendation back to the full board. Now, your chair talked about earlier tonight when making his appointments that, there's no way you can become expert as a board member on every single issue that will come before the county board, but you will become expert on the issues that come before your particular county committees. And so if we believe in our strong committee structure in the state of Wisconsin, if you believe that your committees have done their homework well, I am told by some that your county board meeting should probably not last more than 30 minutes. If you truly believe in your committee structure and know that your committees did their work and are making the best recommendation for the county. Now, I say that and I get a lot of laughs, but there are some counties whose board meetings last 30 to 45 minutes. There are other counties whose board meetings last hours. So I don't know where Chippewa falls in this. I can probably tell by the looks on your face that you're not a 30-minute county, are you? That's okay. That's okay. All right, so again, as I just said, committees are structured so that they do a lot of the preliminary work and make recommendations to the full board. You'll have all the knowledge and expertise on the issues that come before your committee. And again, you'll know who in your community, you'll learn a lot about who in the community your programs are serving while you sit in your committee. All right, let's transition from the committees and let's talk about the staff roles and responsibilities. So staff basically have two jobs. They have the obligation to carry out their duties in a manner that is consistent with the policy direction of the county board. You set the policy, staff implements the policy. That's their first job. But their second role is to make recommendations and give professional advice. So let's say, for example, you're in a committee meeting and you have questions about how a particular program works within your county, that there's a proposed change, requested. It is certainly the role of the staff to provide you with information about and to answer your questions with regard to that particular program. Typically your staff does not make policy other than internal policy that relates to the operation of their department. But you guys should really think about using your staff as a resource, to assist you in making recommendations, and they can assist you as well in getting the information that you may need in order to make the best policy recommendation for your county. So when we take a look at your administration, which includes your department heads, your administrator, your staff, when we talk about the roles that they play, they really have to, again, implement the policies and strategies as set by the board. They deal with things in the shorter term. We talked about you guys being visionaries and thinking long-term. Staff thinks about things in the shorter term. Staff is responsible for the day-to-day operations. It's your staff that may have to get into the weeds on certain issues. Your staff has to, they have to pay attention to the detail as to how programs operate. And oftentimes that means that there has to be specialized training. For example, your human services department, and I tend to pick on that because I lobbied on health and human services issues for a number of years. So for example, you hire a lot of social workers within your health and human services department that are required to have not only a social work degree, but additional specialized training that the state requires. So this slide could get me in trouble. So when you guys are going to hire staff, we'll make this interactive for fun. So when you guys hire staff at the county, what types of qualifications do you look for when staff is being hired? What do you think they're looking for? Just go ahead, shout it out.
Professionals.
You want someone who's a professional? Qualified? Licensed, yeah. Experienced, what was that in the back? Knowledgeable, yep. You want somebody who has that education, experience, training, that you make sure if they have licenses, they're all up to date, right? Now, let's talk about the qualifications to serve on the county board. What were your qualifications to sit in the seats that you're sitting in tonight?
Where you live.
None. Where you live, that's one. You have to live in your district.
Citizen.
You have to be a citizen. How old do you have to be? 18, Mr. Chair?
Signatures on a piece of paper.
Signatures on a piece of paper. The other big thing you guys are missing?
Conference of peers.
The other big thing you're missing, you can't be a felon to serve on the county board. Yes. Really, Carrie? I know, right?
Can't even vote.
I know where you work. Yeah, you can't be a felon. So we take a look at the things we talked about for our staff and the qualifications for you to sit in your seats tonight. Very different, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't have board members that aren't educated, that don't have, professional experience. You as board members come from a lot of very different backgrounds. You guys have connections to the citizens. You have connections to your local communities. And that is what makes you very valuable members of this body, because you have those local connections back to the community. You bring a wealth of knowledge and experience, but it can be very different than the knowledge and experience that is needed to be a staff member in Chippewa County. So when we talk about policy versus administration, as a board, when you're making policy, you guys are asking the questions such as, what do we want to do and why should we do it? Once you make those decisions, then it's up to your staff to talk more so about the where, when, and how is this going to get done. You tell us how to do it, staff figures out how to get it done. I'm just gonna, let's skip that one. We'll skip that one. All right. Individual county board supervisors have no management or leadership role outside of committees and commissions. Their authority is collective as a member of the county board. What's that a nice way of saying?
Stay in your lane.
You're not
Stay in your lane, absolutely. Stay in your lane. You had some, sir?
You are not special.
You're not special? No, that doesn't mean that. You guys are all special. And actually, one county's county board rules, you know what they state very explicitly in their county board rules? I couldn't believe I actually saw it written in a set of county board rules. Their county board rules say, do not micromanage departments. I am shocked that I saw that directly in a set of county board rules, but I did. All right. Let's talk a little bit about how the courts view the distinction between policy and administration. This was a court case from 1996. It is Schutte versus Vandehei, and yes, it is Vandehei, not Vandehei, for those of you who grew up in the valley, Fox Valley, you would know that's Vandehei. So at the time, Jim Schutte, because I was around in 1996, Jim Schutte was the county board chair of Outagamie County. Ron Vandehei was the county executive in Outagamie County. The facts behind the case, I'm not a lawyer, so you're going to get my layman's version of all of this, but the county, Outagamie County owns an airport. There is a lot of farmland around the airport. The county board wanted to lease the land to farmers so that the land just didn't sit idle around the airport. Instead, it said, we should lease this land to a farmer. We have some folks that are interested. The FAA was brought in. The FAA said this is not a problem at all. It is okay for the county to lease the land. The county executive, on the other hand, didn't think it was such a good idea to lease that land around the airport. So the county executive said, nope, don't think this is going to happen. So the county, the county board and the county executive then got into a legal dispute about whether or not, once the county board adopted that as policy, whether or not it had to be implemented by the county executive. Now, don't ask about the whole veto thing and everything. We'll just complicate things. But what the court said here is that the county board's function is primarily policy making and legislative, while the county executive functions as an administrator and manager. Policy has been defined as a high-level overall plan embracing the general goals and acceptable procedures, especially of a governmental body. Legislative power, as distinguished from executive power, is the authority to make laws, but not to enforce them, or appoint the agents charged with the duty of such enforcement. The crucial test for determining of what is legislative and what is administrative has been said to be whether the ordinance is one making a new law or one executing a law already in existence. So based on that, who won the court case? Who thinks it was the county board? Who thinks it was the county executive who won the court case? Your corp counsel's not raising his hand now, is he? Corp counsel would be correct. Although I didn't see what the corp counsel did when I asked about the county board. But the county board did win the court case. Remember when we talked about the powers and duties of the executive branch versus the legislative branch? The legislative branch set the policy. The executive, as a member of the executive branch, had to carry out that policy. Now, the kicker here, however, is that who executes that lease agreement? So even though the county board won, all right. Let's talk about just what happens when we don't have a distinction between policy and administration. And I don't want to keep beating this dead horse here. But if we don't have that distinction between policy making and administration, you as a county board are going to spend a lot of time on the trivial. You guys are going to get into the weeds. You're going to be reading lots of complicated documents. You are going to have long-running meetings that accomplish little. Your committees are going to really be window dressing for what staff wants to do. You'll spend a lot of time meddling in administration. And basically, we talk about reactivity versus proactivity. As a board, do you guys want to be visionary? Or do you want to be reacting to things that are happening within your county? All right. So there is a group of county officials. This is our organizational chart. Let's just skip that one. This one. This is the one that applies to you guys as the administrator. I think when we talked about the role of the administrator, we talked about how the statutes clearly delineate what those roles and responsibilities are when you have a county administrator. This chart, very clear, very easy, it shows that. In counties that have an administrative coordinator, the chart you'll see is not as easy and not as neat. But there's a group of county officials. We talked about administration, being your county administrator. We talked about county staff. We talked about the county board. Who didn't we talk about yet in the county structure? Who didn't we talk about yet? We didn't talk about the county constitutional officers, did we? So where do they fit in, right? They're not on the chart yet. Where do they fit in all of this? So we talk about our county constitutional officers. We talk generally about 5, the clerk of circuit court, the sheriff, the treasurer, the register of deeds, and the county clerk. If you guys, sometimes, the coroner is elected, sometimes the surveyor is elected, but, in many more counties, I think we're starting to see a change where they're not elected anymore. So we're going to talk about these 5. So where do these constitutional officers fall in the chart? And when we talk about the county constitutional officers, we talk about them having a dual persona. The reason we do that is because our county constitutional officers, they're independently elected, very much like we talked about the county executive. In the same manner that the county board has no authority over the county executive, you don't have a lot of authority over your county constitutional officers, again, because they are independently elected. However, what makes the constitutional officers, well, they're not even really different from the exec in a sense, because the only really authority that the county has over the county constitutional officers comes at county budget time. When the county constitutional officers come to the county board and let you know what they need in order to maintain the operations of their office. Now, that being said, if you don't like your constitutional officer, I'm going to tell you right now, you can't zero out their budget. That is not allowed. You have to provide them with enough revenue to undertake their constitutional authorities. Now, if the county sheriff comes in and says he believes that all of the sheriff's deputies should be driving Mercedes instead of Ford, you don't have to pay for those Mercedes. The Fords can get the job done. But again, I will say this. I've worked with a lot of county constitutional officers over the years. I talked to a number of them, sometimes on a daily basis. I will tell you, your county constitutional officers understand their role. They want to work within the county structure. They will come to your committee meetings. They will talk to you. They will provide you with reports on their offices. So they really want to, work in harmony with the county board and within the county system. But again, they are ultimately elected officials, so they are accountable to the public. So, last few slides here, working together as a goal. I'm not going to go through all of these slides because it would just be me repeating everything I've told you guys, but it's a really good summary for you guys. If you just want a quick summary of everything we talked about, go to these few slides here at the end, talking about working together as a goal. Sometimes we talk about this as achieving harmony within the county family. All right. Let's see here. Yep, and the key points to remember, again, all of that is repetitive of what we talked about as well. I know I've talked to you guys for a long time already tonight, so I'm going to stop here and see if any of you guys have any questions for me. Questions about anything? About this? How you can sign up for cows? Who wants to attend cows? Who wants to attend cows just because it's called cows? All right. If there are no questions, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you. I will be here through the end of your meeting. If you have questions for me that you don't want to ask in the public setting, that's okay. Also, all of my contact information is up there as well. So feel free to give me a call at any time. Office cell, I'm on the road a bit, so totally acceptable to use my cell phone. That's fine. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll use discretion. How about a 5-minute break? It's been almost 2 hours sitting here. Just give a 5-minute break and we'll continue with our last section.
Thank you.
As a reminder, while you're on your break, we are still live, so anything you say will be on live.
Yours are in the ceiling.
I'm closer to them, so they'll hear me first.
I don't have it.
I was gonna get here earlier to talk to you. Send you an email. when I get home tonight.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's just start my day at 5 and 4. Calling.
But I used
You're done that.
to, so very first day of farm.
Slow down enough to go, okay, I can actually email it.
Sure, no problem. So you won't be in the office. Probably Monday before I get.
Oh, email, mail package. I have to get those here.
I think you're gonna want to talk about her. Yeah, she'll know. Unfortunately, I don't. It is. It is. You have to come in the there's the county administrator's office, the corporation's office, where those are. No, it's pretty, you can go through either one. Usually people, I think, come to the county administrator's office and then they'll trace it. It's kind of in the deep.
You will get the differences, the interaction, the Q&A, the buffer. Have that interactive discussion amongst the group online, but in terms of the training materials, it's all the same. Same presentation. So you don't miss any.
I'm just gonna blow through this.
Do it virtual option.
I can't talk as fast as Charlie.
3 different Monday mornings.
Like his head's gonna pop off his shoulder.
Yeah, that's how you learn, right? Ask lots of questions.
Yeah, I know, it's hard. It's hard. Like, okay, I didn't know if I was being collected.
I didn't.
Yeah, it's like a powerful presentation.
Building, so they're doing a building, or they're like doing an expansion project or some kind, and people come in and have to get county approval for everything.
Oh, for zoning?
So I
They'd have to tell us.
So,
Sarah said, did she
Yeah, it's called the zoning director.
I can get 2 more?
Absolutely.
I was gonna ask Andy, is that
Alteration
of county
I know, I was gonna put it on our laptop.
Because we found things that, so like public knows.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was wearing my shirt, you know, give the shirt. That's your, you see, that's got the, my kids love that shirt.
If they're not comfortable with the zoning director, tell me.
Yes. Uniquely was personal, so like if I bring these stickers, I've got it on my stem.
Hard to keep up with Charlie's thing here, but your content will take.
Yeah, right. Charlie is. It's exhausting. Times. We've talked about this.
I lived in Texas for 1 year, so I funny under his crop.
He's a good guy, but yeah, I know there's.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right word for it. I just panicked. That's all. Situational awareness. You know, in that whole notes section, where are you skilled at? It took me. He's an expert at everything. Here.
All of a sudden.
Put a good word in for those that were clear. Put a bench on the trail.
Family cups.
Did I do something wrong?
No, it's just
And if we got 5 year-olds.
Don't eat it.
Well, that's what. If for again.
Talk really fast.
I'm just.
And like, beginning on some other people. With all of this, and like now we've got so many discussions, we've got certain parties. Right, we're trying to work in this, my regular job, how we got to that situation. Kind of multiple.
They're like, I'm not saying, so I guess I get to work legally all these years and I need to resign.
Really happy. Yeah. But yeah, I do kind of some book coaching. I refer to it as book coaching.
Can I start the meeting?
Yeah, thanks. I got yelled at for you. Because they cheated.
Yeah, this person. Oh, yes. Just picking up on what project while you're part of.
Break out the hammer.
Okay, starting.
Let's try to. Let's try to come back, get started on our last session. Never hit me.
Hey,
That's what it's there for.
that's what it's there for, to get everyone. No, we need to.
They're generally, I guess, what you signed up.
You guys naughty?
And you fill out that sheet.
A couple more minutes.
There. Oh, I'm back.
Need this hallway.
Yeah.
Flashing. Like
The theater's going.
like, yeah, there.
Send.
He's gonna go get them.
Yeah. Take the camera out there with. Thank you. That's
The end. Say
There's one.
they'll figure it
Oh,
out.
that might be a while.
Yeah. Say
Well, he can.
Just trying to.
Okay, we'll continue on with our last section.
Okay.
By far the most exciting content you'll see.
Let's not go there, okay? Well, first of all, I do have to tell you, I've had to give the last presentation of the night enough times to know that I'm the only thing standing between you and the rest of your night. So I'm going to do my best to get us through the materials as possible. One disclaimer being that obviously I can't talk as fast as Charlie, so I'm not going to try to keep up with that. So we're all good with that. Let's jump into it. So let's start with the open meetings law, or the public meetings law, whichever you prefer to call it. I prefer open meetings law. As the slide indicates, the open meetings law is found primarily under section 19.81 of the Wisconsin statutes. The purpose of the open meetings law is to give the public the fullest and most complete information concerning the affairs of government. In order to carry out that purpose, the law requires that all meetings of all state and local government bodies be publicly held in places reasonably accessible to members of the public and be open to all citizens at all times unless the law specifically provides otherwise. The law also states, and I think this is important, is that it is to be liberally construed to carry out the goal of transparency in government. So the next slide is the scope of the law. In other words, who does the law apply to? As you can see from the slide, it applies to a state or local agency, board, commission, committee, council, department, or public body, corporate, and politic created by constitution, state, statute, ordinance, rule, or order. So for our purposes, it applies to the county and its board of supervisors, committees,
and other subunits. So we know it applies to the county board and its subunits. The next logical question is, when does it apply? The law applies whenever the governmental body holds a meeting, as that term is defined under the law. And as the slide indicates, the law defines a meeting as and this is a bit of a convoluted definition, but a convening of members of a governmental body for the purpose of exercising the responsibilities, authority, power, or duties delegated to or vested in the body. The main significance of falling within the definition of a meeting under law is that it triggers the requirement that the public be given notice of the meeting so that the public can monitor the activities of government. So what does all that legalese mean? Well, we've had to resort to courts on this. They've interpreted the statutory definition through case law to provide guidance on how to determine when the definition of a meeting applies. Specifically, the Wisconsin Supreme Court developed what's now known as the Showers test. And that's named after the last name of one of the parties in the case. According to the Showers test, a meeting occurs whenever essentially the following three things are all present. One is that the members of a governmental body are convening. Two, that the purpose for the members convening is to engage in governmental business. And that can take many forms. It can take the form of discussion, collective decision, or just information gathering. And number three, the number of members convening needs to be sufficient to determine the body's course of action. So if we break that down a little bit, two questions you would want to ask yourself in trying to determine whether there's a meeting is, what is the purpose of the members convening, and how many members of the body are convening? In other words, is there a quorum of the body convening? And if you recall, that's something that we talked about quorums on Tuesday. And as you can imagine, the analysis for determining whether a particular gathering is a meeting under the law, it's very fact specific. You have to look at every circumstance. There's a number of different factors that have to be weighed in determining whether there's a meeting. All the elements have to be met. Okay, so we know that in order for there to be a meeting under law, there needs to be a quorum of the body's members, right? So, and we already know that one way for a quorum to occur is if there's a sufficient number of members of a government body physically gathered in the same place to determine the body's course of action. The less obvious way a quorum can occur is by engaging in what's known as a walking quorum. So what is a walking quorum? A walking quorum is a series of gatherings among separate groups of members of a governmental body, each less than quorum size, who agree tacitly or explicitly to act uniformly in sufficient number to reach a quorum. So the three elements based on that definition are a series of gatherings of separate groups that are each less than quorum size, and the purpose of gathering is to engage in governmental business, and there's an implied or express agreement to act uniformly in sufficient number to reach a quorum. A walking quorum can be created, you should know, by one-on-one conversations in person, by telephone, and what we're seeing, what's in the electronic age is that it becomes a problem that it can be caused by successive email messages between sufficient numbers of governmental bodies to create a quorum. The reason they are so concerning in the context of email communications is because of the ease of spreading the conversation simply with the pressing of a button. Just because that's kind of it might be kind of hard to digest. I tried to come up with a hypothetical for this. It's a bit of an extreme example, but I think it does illustrate the concept. and forgive me, but every time I do this, I feel like I'm telling the beginning of a Ole and Lena joke, but, so let's say supervisors A, B, C, and D are members of a 5-member committee. So we've got 4 members of a 5-member committee. Supervisor A sends an email specifically to Supervisor B in which an item of government business is discussed. Let's just say there's some discussion and maybe opinions on that item. Okay, not necessarily a problem at this point, right? But what if member B then forwards on the email he or she received from Supervisor A to Supervisors C and D? Okay, it's been sent on, nothing more has happened yet. Probably not the wisest course of action, but without more, probably not a problem at this point. But what if Supervisor C or D then replies to all, which is the feature of email, saying that he or she agrees with their thoughts and/or says that he or she understands it, and that they're all going to cast the same vote on the item. That as that person understands it, they're all going to cast the same vote on the item. To me, at that point, we're really running the risk of having a walking quorum. The risk has shot up greatly. Why? Because it's starting to look more and more like there's an implied agreement among all of those groups to take a certain course of action. And there's, and it's in a sufficient number to reach a quorum. The number of members present requirement is easy enough to determine if we're looking at it from the perspective of the power to pass a proposal. For example, we already know that if the size of a government body is 5 members, it takes 3 members convening to constitute a majority or a quorum required for passage of a proposal. That's simple enough. However, a meeting can also occur if what's called a negative quorum exists. Using the previous example, let's assume that only 2 of the 5 members were convening, but the proposal required a 2/3 or a 3/4 majority vote for passage, rather than just a regular majority. In that case, the 2 members could conceivably defeat the proposal since there would not be sufficient numbers to affirmatively attain a 2/3 or a 3/4 majority vote. That's what what's referred to as a negative quorum, as indicated in the slide. The size of a negative quorum is smaller than a majority in situations where a supermajority, which is a 2/3 or 3/4 vote, is required for a body to pass a measure. Okay, so I've touched on how quorums can occur through the use of email a little bit. I think this slide expands on that. While it's easy to determine in a traditional convening of members in person whether enough members are present to constitute a quorum can also exist when members convene and communicate with each other through the media, including electronic media, rather than in being in each other's physical presence. We saw that in the example that I just gave on walking quorums. Given that emails become such a prevalent method of communication for many of us, I just want to touch specifically on emails in the context of how corresponding in that medium could constitute a meeting. A little bit more on that. Communications via electronic mail may constitute a meeting, as I said, and be subject to the open meetings law. And this is what I wanted to cover, is that the electronic mail features such as reply all or forwarding mail make it possible for a message to be instantaneously transmitted to a sufficient number of members of the governmental body to determine the body's course of action, which would satisfy the definition of a meeting. There isn't really any applicable precedent that addresses the use of electronic mail in the context of the open meetings law. But I would strongly discourage all of you from communicating with each other via electronic mail. That if it's possible, I know it's not always realistic. Whenever it's possible, if it's not necessary, don't do it by email. If you can talk to each other in person, on the phone even, that's better. I'm not naive enough to know that most of our communication happens, or a lot of it does, business communications via email. But for public meetings purposes, or open meetings purposes, and public records purposes, it complicates things. And you just, if you're going to do it, you need to make sure that you're being very careful and only try to address one person and make sure that they're not replying all to your email if you do send it to more than one person. You don't know when you're going to end up with a quorum. Go to the next slide. I just want to switch gears and talk a bit about meeting in closed session now. If you remember, I included a couple slides on closed sessions in my parliamentary procedure presentation Tuesday night. So hopefully you've had a chance to look that over. As you recall, the purpose of the open meetings law is to permit the public the fullest and most complete information concerning the affairs of government. So we know the presumption is that government meetings are supposed to be held in public and open to the public. However, the legislature did carve out 11 specific narrow exceptions to the open session requirement, which allows those items to be discussed in closed session. And those are all under section 19.85 of the Wisconsin statutes. An important point about the closed session exceptions is that if one is invoked by the body, it needs to be specifically identified on the agenda. That is noticed to the public along with a reasonable description of the agenda item that will be discussed in closed session. That way the public has an idea of what the body is going into closed session about, and they can monitor what's being talked about. And then this next slide, I've provided, there's more exceptions than this, but these are the ones that really are germane to the county in terms of the exceptions that would apply to the relevant to the county. I'm not going to, they're all in your materials. I'm not going to go through all 7 of those. What I wanted to do tonight is limit ourselves to going through the 3 that I think are most, from my experience over the last 16 years, were most relevant, that have been the most relevant here that I've seen. You know, if you do go through the rest of them, you have any questions, again, like I said before, feel free to contact me. I'm always willing to talk about any questions you may have on them. So the first one is employment, and that's under section 0.85 1C. That's considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Yeah, and I think if my memory serves me correctly, I believe the executive committee and the board have invoked this exception in the past for the purpose of discussing the county administrator's evaluations. So that's where I've seen that used. It doesn't come up very often, but. And then another more often used exception is for conducting business with competitive or bargaining implications under 19.851E. And where I've seen this used to go into closed session is with the Economic Development Committee, as well as the board. They've gone into closed session under this exception to discuss and make decisions about specific economic development projects that the county's directly involved in, and then involve the sale of or the purchase of county property under this exception. And the third one that's most often used is, this one's pretty self-explanatory, but anytime the county's involved or likely to be involved in litigation, this exception is invoked so that the board or a committee can confer in closed session with its attorney or attorneys on legal strategy and with respect to litigation in which the county is or is likely to become involved. So now that we know the board can go into closed session if an appropriate exception applies, who may attend closed session? In general, the open meetings law gives wide discretion to a governmental body to admit to a closed session anyone whose presence the body determines is necessary for the consideration of the matter that is the subject of the meeting. And that was from a Department of Justice correspondence from December 15th of 1988. I just wanted to touch on the fact that there's been a fairly recent change to the open meetings or open meetings law that requires three things. First, any motion to go into closed session must include all the names of the individuals who will be allowed to attend the closed session. Second, prior to going into the closed session, the chair must announce in open session the names of those individuals who will be allowed to attend the closed session. And third, the minutes from the closed session shall also include the names of those individuals in attendance. And then just a couple of other general requirements for the closed session minutes themselves are that they need to include any motions and votes that were taken on the motions in closed session. And finally, that closed session minutes those remain confidential until there's no longer a need for the closed session to which they're attached. So. And then as you can see in this slide, I mentioned the change in law, and that's been codified in section 2-60O of the Chippewa County Code of Ordinances. Okay, this next slide covers some additional considerations for closed sessions. First, any motion to convene in closed session requires a majority vote. The motion must recite the statutory exception that's being invoked to go into closed session and a description of the subject matter that is to be discussed. All the same information should be listed on the agenda. And again, the reason for that is it allows proper notice to the public of what will be discussed in closed session. And one final consideration is that the discussion in closed session needs to be limited to the subject matter that is recited in the motion and listed on the agenda. That's very important, that the discussion doesn't stray from the specific item that it's agenda as, or the subject matter of the agenda. Just some practical suggestions on voting in closed session. One consideration is that any motion and vote to be taken based on the closed session should be in open session unless doing so would compromise the need for the closed session. An example, however, where it may be appropriate for a motion and vote to occur in closed session might be where administration, this is just an example, is discussing the details of ongoing negotiations on a proposal for the sale of property in the business park to a prospective purchaser with the Economic Development Committee. And they're seeking to direction on the terms of a sale from the committee. Any motion and vote giving direction regarding ongoing negotiations could justifiably be held in closed session because it would otherwise compromise the need for the closed session, primarily because the sale hasn't been finalized. So that's just one example where a motion and vote could be taken in closed session. And then one final consideration that I wanted to cover is the importance of confidentiality. I can't stress this enough, that confidentiality of closed session matters is imperative, in my opinion, for three main reasons. Statutory exceptions that allow closed sessions all involve members of a very sensitive nature. Second is the confidentiality allows the members of the body to speak freely and responsibly about sensitive issues. And although it's not in and of itself a violation of the open meetings law, disclosing what's discussed in closed sessions could have an impact on the county's legal liability if there's any pending legal proceeding that is party to or could violate privacy or other laws. So there's three really good reasons to keep everything that's discussed in closed session confidential. The three remaining, I think I have 3 slides remaining on open meetings on. It's with regards to penalties and enforcement. I'm not gonna go into detail about enforcement of the open meetings law. Like I said, the material's there for you to look at. I think the only thing that I would say is that actions for violations of the open meetings law can be brought by either the district attorney on behalf of the state or by members of the public themselves. And more often than not, what I've seen is that the majority of the cases are initiated by the public themselves. Okay, so let's change gears here and go to the open or the public records law. Again, I'm not going to cover every slide that's in your materials, but they're there for your reference. I just wanted to hit a few primary areas with the time that we have left tonight. So let's start with the public policy and purpose. The open records law starts under section 19.31 of the Wisconsin statutes. The slide says the public policy and purpose of the open records law is virtually identical to that of the open meetings law, in that it recognizes that all persons are entitled to the greatest possible information regarding the affairs of government and the official acts of those officers and employees who represent them. So for that reason, the open records law is construed, much like the open meetings law, in favor of disclosure of public records. In the open meetings law, it's construed in favor of openness. In other words, there's a presumption that the public is entitled to full access to public records unless either a specific exemption under the law applies that would prevent disclosure, or in the absence of that, whether the interest of the public in disclosure outweighs the harm to the public in disclosure. So given that the legislature has put a high priority on the disclosure of government records, it's not surprising that the definition of a record under the law is quite broad. And the open records law defines the term record as any material on which written, drawn, printed, spoken, visual, or electromagnetic information is recorded or preserved, regardless of physical form or characteristics which has been created or being kept by an authority. So that's a fairly broad definition. That covers pretty much just about everything. The definition of whether something is a record, this is important to know, is not based on the form that it takes or its location, the focus is on whether the content involves government business. However, the law does tell us what is not a record. And those things would include drafts, notes, preliminary documents, purely personal property, and also trade secrets, as that's defined under the public records law. Again, the analysis is always fact specific. Sometimes, depending on who's seen it, a draft or a note may be considered a public record. It all really depends on circumstances. So who must keep a record? This slide shows that under the public records law, you as elected officials are considered to be an authority and also the legal custodian of your records. This slide shows a list of things that may or not be considered records depending on the content. Those items that are not created by the authority but in the authority's possession could be personal email, calls, and documents that are on the authority's accounts. It could be business email, calls, and documents on personal accounts, social media pages and posts, and also contract records. And again, it's all very fact specific. It all depends on the circumstances. I'm going to focus for the rest of the night on the use of email simply because it's the type of record that's by far requested in open records requests, and it can lead to the potential for the most liability for the county. So first, I presume that all of you at this point have been issued county email accounts. Is that right? Has everybody got one? Okay. I can't emphasize enough how important it is that you use that account rather than a personal email account for conducting county business. I mean, if you take nothing else away from the presentation tonight, please at least remember that. It's plagued with all kinds of potential pitfalls for you. We don't want to see that happen. One reason is that if you're using a personal account rather than your county email account to send and receive emails involving county business, again, that's the buzzword here is county business, and a records request is made, a search for your personal account for the records may be required. And then a second reason is that all the emails to and from your county account are archived and maintained by Andy and our IT folks. So in the event there's a records request, the archive can be easily searched to respond to records requests. And that just makes things a lot easier. We have what would you call it? An archive searcher that can, with keywords, we can find just about any type of email with the right search parameters. Always remember that whether emails, calls, documents, et cetera, that are on either county or private accounts or records that are subject to disclosure depends on the content of the record. Doesn't matter where it's found, the format it's in, or the medium. Specifically, whether the determining factor is whether the content involves the conducting of government business, as I mentioned before. And the same guidelines apply for social media. Social media has grown exponentially in the last, probably 5 to 10 years. I would strongly urge you to reserve your use of social media for purely personal uses and not for county business. As posts on those accounts may be recorded subject to disclosure as well. and I'm not going to go through it, but I've included an example involving a Google Groups website that was created by a town chairman that was the subject of an informal opinion of the Attorney General. I just think it's a good real-life example of the dangers of engaging in government business on a private website or a social media page. So I'd encourage you to take a look at the slides on that. So who can request a record? First is that with certain exceptions, the requester need not state the purpose of the request or identify him or herself. That's important. And also the requester's motivation for making the request is not relevant. So if you got a request, it wouldn't be appropriate to ask the requester why he or she is making the request. Third, records requests do not need to be in writing. Records requests do not require any magical words, such as mentioning the opener of the public records law. They do, however, need to reasonably describe the record requested so that the custodian, in your case, doesn't have to guess what records the requester wants. You shouldn't have to guess what they're looking for. And again, in terms of the subject matter, it needs to be reasonably specific, but also in terms of the time, as to time, it wouldn't be reasonable for someone to request emails for the last 40 years. It needs to be a fairly reasonable amount of time. Because otherwise it's just overburdensome. There's no way it can. We want to complete the request and get the documents that they need. They also have to be reasonable. And then additionally, only records that exist at the time of the request have to be produced. There's no record at that time that exists. That's how you respond, is that there are no responsive records to your request. Nor is the authority required to respond to a request for information if it is not in the form of a record. In other words, the authority isn't required to create a new record in order to respond to the request. If there's nothing, there's no record, they're just asking you questions and wanting answers, that's not requesting a record. And you can tell them that you're not required to create a new record in order to respond to the request. Finally, I just want to leave you with a couple practical tips. Look, we all understand that with email, like I said before, and social media, that this is currently a digital world that we live in, but anytime you can avoid creating an unnecessary public record, that's one less record that you or the county needs to maintain and provide if requested. And the biggest thing with that, I think here is that the amount of staff time alone that's required to respond to records requests, it's significant. And it also just distracts away from providing other necessary services to the public. So anytime, I understand it's going to be necessary. It has its place. But if it's not necessary, don't do it. You're just creating another public record that needs to be maintained. And potentially, if it's requested in a public record request, that's the other thing is now it's out in public, and make sure it's something that, you'd be comfortable with the public seeing. That's another thing. So anyway, that's really all I have tonight. I guess one last thing, housekeeping, just to remind you that if you receive an open records request, please contact our office. Either Jim or I can help you to, to analyze and determine what we need to do to respond. We're more than glad to help out with that. And I just, I thank you for allowing me to share this information with you tonight, and I look forward to working with you over the next couple of years. Does anybody have any questions? Supervisor Carey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a committee of 5 is supposed to meet at 4 p.m. At 4 p.m., only 2 of those members are there, which is not a quorum. Is that meeting dead immediately at that time, or can you wait somebody coming in late?
You're saying at the time that the meeting's
Is
supposed,
scheduled to
it can't start until there's a quorum.
Okay, but what I'm saying is at 4 o'clock, when the gavel's supposed to hit to start the meeting, there's only 2, which is not a quorum.
Right.
Is that meeting dead right then and there, or can you wait?
You could wait,
Okay,
but you can't start the meeting until there's a
I
quorum.
understand that. Yep, thank you.
We up to the discretion of the chair, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
Supervisor Hennick, in the last 10 years, has anyone in this position been in trouble or fined for any reason in the open records law?
Any county board supervisors? Not that I'm aware of, no.
So it's a rare event. Second question is, can they go fishing for your personal emails, your personal Facebook stuff, if there's nothing government related on there?
When you say phishing, you mean in terms of their requests, asking for those items? They're under the public records law, there is a portion, certain private information has to be redacted. It can't be disclosed. There's a number of things that aren't allowed to be disclosed, so.
So to be clear, if you don't talk about business on your personal emails or Facebook, you're pretty good.
You should be just fine. Yep.
Thank you.
Supervisor Erickson. Sorry, everybody was raising their things. I should be looking there. I'm sorry, protocol. I was not looking. Okay, all right. Inadvertent button. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I know looking at the clock, you might be a little disappointed. It's not all the way 9 o'clock yet. But we are moving on to, item 9 would be agenda items for future considerations. In general, once you get more involved, we'll have various topics and discussions and things. If something raises an issue or you like to consider for an agenda or something, either contact me or we can bring it up here. Right now, unless somebody has anything, other than normal, I'll do. If not, we'll move on to the next item.
Erickson will make a motion to adjourn.
Erickson has moved to adjourn.
Lot seconds.
Lot seconds. All in favor? We'll go voice vote. Aye. Thank you again very much.
Just to be blunt, I mean, sit her up long enough, you'll find that.
Yeah, I guess I'm on one of the committees. Where are you?
What is that?